Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
At some point in the show today, Nick Chamberlain is going to play the groovy music because it's Thursday, and Thursday is Open Forum, and the groovy Open Forum music that will come on later. Open Forum means if you have a question about what we Catholics believe, what we Catholics do, why we believe those things, why we do those things, we are welcoming those questions today. 888-318-7884 is our number. If you prefer the spelling version, 888-31-TRUTH. Give us a call if you have a question, whether you are Catholic or not. Anyone is welcome to call. And taking your calls today, Jimmy Akin is our guest. Jimmy is senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, author, among many other things, of A Daily Defense, 365 Days plus one to becoming a better apologist. Hi, Jimmy.
Hey, how you doing, Si?
I am well. I am very well. I'm fired up for Thursday.
Good, me too.
Yeah, really? You're gonna be, it's going to be high energy day today?
Well, maybe. We'll see.
We'll see. All right. Again, 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH, the number. Jimmy, a little question for you to start the day today.
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea what's coming.
No, because I asked you about energy. This just came to me. Sometimes you hear this idea that our soul is energy. You know, like it's my energy. Is that a proper way to talk about the soul?
Well, so not from a Catholic point of view and not from a scientific point of view. In science, energy, or one of the most common definitions of energy, is it's the capacity to do work. And while our souls
I have no soul then.
have energy and that they can affect things, they can do things, they're
see.
not simply the capacity to do work, at least not in any obvious way. And so, it's problematic, I would say, to say the soul is energy. You do sometimes hear this thought expressed, like in New Age circles, and it's hard to find any scientific basis for this. In fact, there was a widespread viewpoint that was very common, actually until about the last century, known as vitalism. And vitalism was the view that biological life forms, the reason that they're different than non-living things, whether corpses or stones or whatever it may be. The difference between a living thing and a non-living thing was that it had this vital life force or life energy in it. And during the course of the development of modern chemistry and biology, that view eventually was eroded away because they could not find any evidence of a vital energy in living things compared to non-living things. There are like four fundamental forces that science has been able to discover and describe in the natural world. That's electromagnetism, the strong force, the weak force, and gravity. And all four of those forces play a role, especially the first three, but all four of them play a role in life forms and in non-living things. None of them are unique to living things. And so it seems that the soul, which we do have and which living things do have, is a non-empirical quality. It's one that's not subject to measurement by scientific means. And so that would make it hard to describe it as just another form of energy because it doesn't fit the other forms of energy that we have.
Right. And energy and matter and energy, unless I'm mistaken, following the theory of relativity, they're
interchangeable.
They're states of they're interchangeable. So I guess there's an idea that maybe well, spirit is like energy and matter is the physical stuff. But that's really not true at all. That doesn't have any.
No, in fact, as you mentioned, I mean, the famous equation E equals mc squared
Yeah.
Establishes an equivalence between matter and energy. So you can take matter and turn it into energy, and you can take energy and turn it into matter. But we're talking about physical energy here.
Yeah.
And as we've said, it seems that the soul and spiritual phenomena don't operate in that way. They're not physical by nature. They're not empirical. They're not subject to scientific measurement. And, you know, I can't rule out that someone could one day formulate a theory of how spirits work that would make sense in terms of some kind of energy. That's not something that that has been done to date, and it's thus problematic since the only analog we have for energy is physical energy, and it's clearly different.
Yeah, yeah. But you see that old idea though in like in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, kind of like as soon as the electricity goes into him, well, that's the thing. That's the thing that.
But electricity is energy.
Right, right. But that's the thing that gives him
lightning is
life.
energy.
Yeah, right. But that's not doesn't make you a person to have electricity run through you.
That's based on a different thing that was happening in science at the time, because there was and I won't even try to say his name because I'll get it wrong, but there's a French dude who noticed that if you have like frog legs and you apply electricity to them, they'll twitch and so you can stimulate muscles electrically, which is part of how muscle fiber works. And so they were just finding this out, and it's like, okay, wow, if we can do this with with muscle fiber, maybe you could do it with a whole person if you electrified a dead body the right way.
Yeah. Well, in a certain way, it is true. Like if your heart stops and you apply the proper...
Code blue.
Yeah, I don't like to hear code blue. Lots and lots of callers already. As a matter of fact, lines are filling up as we speak. 888-318-7884. Jimmy Akin is our guest. Our topic is whatever question you might have about the life, the faith, the history of the Catholic Church, or about religion in general, about morals, ethics. All those questions are welcome. You don't have to be Catholic to call. We'll start with Kyle in Forest Lake, Minnesota, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Kyle, you're on with Jimmy Akin.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call. I have a question about energy, but the weird New Age kind.
Okay.
My mom. So I went to this lady once before, and she did this weird. She says it's like some ancient like type of healing where like, she would like basically swing this pendulum thing around, like over up and down your body to figure. I don't know. It was really weird.
Okay.
And also, so she like talked. She's very Christian. She said that she's like seen angels since she was like young, and like they talked to her and stuff. But I don't know. My question is really just like, and she like talks about energy a lot. And my mom is like she's really trying to get into her Catholic faith, and I'm trying my best to get her into her Catholic faith. And like when she goes to this girl, like I don't know, she starts to get the wrong ideas. Like the first time I went to her, she talked a lot on the Catholic Church. She is a Christian, but like I don't know. My question is just like, what's the Catholic Church's stance on energy? And also, she gave my mom like this rock thing, and like my mom like puts it under her pillow next to her, and like it's like the size of my palm. It's like this huge rock, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Okay. Well, I guess I'd say a few things. The first one is that the Catholic Church doesn't recognize this form of, I guess, spiritual energy that this person is talking to your mom about. I don't know whether this person bills herself as a psychic or as a healer or as exactly what she's billing herself as. But you do find this idea in New Age circles that there's some kind of mystical energy that's not subject to scientific investigation that can be manipulated by physical objects like crystals or pyramids or rocks or pendulums or even other things. And the problem is that it sort of falls between two stools, if I can put it that way. It's not supported scientifically. So that's a problem for it. And it's not supported by divine revelation. It's not something that Scripture and the church fathers endorse either. And so coming from a Christian point of view, if you can't validate it either by human experience in science, or which is essentially a measured, tested form of human experience, and if you can't validate it by divine revelation, then how can you have any confidence in it? I don't know what effects this woman is claiming this energy has, but I would suspect that there aren't a lot of really observable effects. And if there are any perceived effects at all, they're more likely attributable to a known phenomenon called the placebo effect, where we want something to work, and so we convince ourselves that it does. And sometimes that can even have some beneficial effects on us. Like if, someone is told a sugar pill is going to reduce their anxiety. Maybe they have crippling anxiety and they can't take other anti-anxiety medicines for some reason, so that they're given a sugar pill and they're told this will help with your anxiety, and they take it and they calm down. Well, it's not because the sugar's doing that. If anything, sugar would ramp up your anxiety. But just the fact that the person wants it to work can have an anti-anxiety effect. It gives them permission to calm down. And so, this rock that your mom's sleeping with under her pillow, if it's supposed to have some kind of mystical influence, it's probably not having any influence at all. And if it does have any influence, or that your mom perceives, it's likely just placebo effect. So I would, in dealing with your mom, I would say, you're Catholic, you're trying to get closer to your Catholic faith. That's awesome. Let's do that. Let's start reading the Catechism together. And you will encounter passages in the Catechism that talk about phenomena like this. But I wouldn't necessarily go to those passages immediately. I mean, you might, but you also might not. You might just say, hey, let's study our faith a little bit together. And as your mom becomes more attached to her Catholic faith, and, she may have questions and concerns, and answering questions and concerns is all about what we do at Catholic Answers. So, Catholic.com is a resource for you. We have a lot of online resources for free there. If your mom ever has questions, she's welcome to call into the show or use the forums or use our Q&A feature. There's all kinds of ways to help your mom grow in her Catholic faith. And over the course of time, these other kind of non-Catholic practices are likely to fall in line and kind of go away as your mom gets a stronger grasp on her Catholic faith, which is an awesome thing, and it's a sign that God's working in her life.
Kyle, we have to go to a break, but thank you very, very much for that call. Call anytime with questions. We'll be right back after this with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live with Jimmy Akin is coming right back.
Hi, this is Trent Horn, and I'm here with a couple of very special offers for all of you interested in standing up for the rights of the unborn. January is Pro-Life Month, and to get as many people as we can involved in the pro-life cause, we're making my book, Persuasive Pro-Life, and my DVD, Making the Case for Life, available for just $5 each. That's a saving of over 70%. I wrote this book and I made this DVD specifically with you in mind, to help you engage in sustained and meaningful dialogue and give you the tools you need to change people's hearts and minds, so that together we might build up a pro-life culture, one person, one conversation at a time. To get your copies of my book, Persuasive Pro-Life, or my DVD, Making the Case for Life, for just $5, call 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com.
It might be said that anti-Catholic notions of the Church's history are the original fake news. With all the misinformation being spread, where does one look for the truth? In The Real Story of Catholic History, Professor Steve Weidenkopf gives you the facts on over 50 of the most common misconceptions about Catholic history and shows how to answer them simply and powerfully. Whether it's to answer claims about Catholicism's supposedly pagan origins, old myths about the Inquisition that never seem to go away, or more modern errors that anti-Catholics put forth, The Real Story of Catholic History is an essential resource for every Catholic's bookshelf. Order your copy of The Real Story of Catholic History today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their faith and values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Cy Kellett, your host. Jimmy Akin, our guest this hour for Open Forum. If you have a question, 888-31-TRUTH is the number, 888-318-7884. January is Pro-Life Month, and to get as many people involved as we can in the pro-life cause, we're making Trent Horn's DVD, Making the Case for Life, available for just $5 a copy. That's a savings of more than 70%. It was made specifically with you in mind to help you engage in sustained and meaningful dialogue and give you the tools you need to change people's hearts and minds. And, you know, together, I do think we're having some success. There's signs of building a culture of life. So we'd love to get this DVD into your hands for just $5 a copy. Go to shop.catholic.com, shop.catholic.com, and get yours for $5 right now. As I said, Jimmy Akin is our guest. And Jimmy, our next call comes from Joshua, Texas, from the Catholic Answers Live app. August is listening. August, your question for Jimmy Akin.
Yes, sir. How are you all doing?
Very well, thank you.
All right. My question was, this has to do with a question that came up in a confirmation class I was teaching, but is the quote-unquote last four things specifically a doctrine of the Church itself, or is it a catechetical formula harmonizing the doctrines on death, judgment, heaven, and hell?
Okay, so you just named the four last things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. And as you or the person you're asking on behalf of is correctly intuited, that's really a catechetical formula. It's not a doctrine per se. It's a listing of four different subjects that there is Catholic teaching about, but that single formula of four last things: death, judgment, hell, and heaven. That's a way to organize and remember Catholic teachings on these areas, that these are four subjects that we need to talk about when we're talking about the last things. But it doesn't exhaust the last things. I mean, you'll notice, for example, purgatory isn't mentioned there. And purgatory is something that is one of the last things. It's something that a lot of people encounter at the particular judgment after death and before they go to heaven. So it's something that you would think kind of ought to be, why aren't there five last things? And then it also doesn't deal with a whole other class of last things, because if you look at death, judgment, hell, and heaven, and even if you add purgatory to that, we're all talking about the last things that we experience as individuals. And in theology, that's sometimes called personal eschatology. Eschatos in Greek means the last, and so the eschaton is the last times, and eschatology is the study of the last things. And so personal eschatology are the last things that will happen to us as individuals. We're going to die, we're going to experience judgment, we're going to go to hell or heaven, and purgatory potentially, but there's this whole other class of last things that isn't even mentioned in that group, like the second coming and the resurrection of the dead and the new heaven and the new earth and the Antichrist and things like that. And those are what's known sometimes as corporate eschatology or general eschatology, because it's not something that every one of us is going to have happen to us. We're not individually all going to be alive at the time of the Antichrist or at the time of the second coming. And so these events are sometimes grouped differently. They're not part of personal eschatology or the personal last things, but of what's going to happen to God's people corporately or in general. And so there's this difference between personal eschatology and general eschatology, and the four last things, so-called, are really just a subset of personal eschatology, and they don't even cover all of that, much less do they cover all of the last things there are to talk about. So you or the person you're asking on behalf of is correct. It's really a catechetical formula, not a doctrine in itself. It's a way of helping us remember certain doctrines.
August, thank you very, very much for that call. I hope that that was helpful. We go now to Stephen in East Jordan, Michigan, listening on 90.9 FM. Stephen, your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hi, Mr. Akin. It's my birthday, so I get a longer, long-winded question, right?
Well, happy birthday, but let's try to keep the question as concise as we can.
I love your show. My point would be better made first before the question. I think the church, I love the Catholic Church. I'm Catholic. Why don't we take a more aggressive stance in the liturgy, like say during the prayers of the faithful, at defining that abortion is murder, instead of calling for just a respect for life in general? Many parishes do that. I can't say all of them. And then we should realize that we have to end the egregious sin of abortion by starting, instead of trying to repeal Roe versus Wade right from the beginning, because that strategy has failed. Maybe we should try to petition our bishops, to petition the legislator to come up with something that where if you marry somebody through the sacrament in the Catholic Church, if you marry a Catholic woman, that she would sign a contract never to get an abortion, ending abortion within the church first before you try to repeal Roe versus Wade to the rest of secular society. Thanks for your time.
Okay. So anytime anyone asks a question that can be put in the form, why don't you hear more about X? The answer is always the same, because people choose not to. They choose to put their emphasis on other things. And whether they ought to emphasize one thing more than another is a judgment call. And personally, in my judgment, I think it would be good to hear more about the need to end abortion and protect life in say the prayers of the faithful. I think it would have been good to be hearing about that more for the last 60-something years, because it was in part the churches of America, not just the Catholic Church, but the churches of America slacking off on this subject and not holding politicians accountable that led to the situation we're in now. So I would be in favor of hearing more about this in the liturgy. Having said that, given that we're in the situation we're in right now, there has to be prudence exercised regarding how much we're going to hear about it. Because if you suddenly had, really frequent and really insistent and really harshly worded even discussions of this in the prayers of the faithful, there could be an alienation of people we need to win over, because not everybody is where they need to be right now. And there's a saying that sometimes used, a flock travels at the speed of the slowest sheep. And, you don't want to let the slowest sheep govern the flock, but you also have to be mindful of the need to bring people along. And that can mean holding back on some stuff. As Jesus said in John's Gospel to the apostles themselves, I have many things to tell you that you cannot now bear. Mm-hmm. And so even Jesus recognized the principle, even with his own apostles, that you have to lead people along because they're not always ready for the full truth all at once. And so as part of the calculus that various church leaders have had to engage in as a result of their pastoral responsibilities, they've judged that a certain level of discussion of life issues is appropriate, but they don't want to go further than that because they're afraid of alienating people that need to be won over. Now, different church leaders have different opinions on this, and that's pretty obvious. Even among very high church leaders, they have different opinions about what level of stress on these issues versus other issues is appropriate, because you've got a finite amount of time, and you can only stress a certain number of things. And so Choices have to be made. Different leaders have different impressions. One thing I would say is don't confuse your experience of your local church with the way it is in the church as a whole. Because I know for a fact there are places here in the United States where you hear about abortion regularly in the prayers of the faithful. I mean, if you go into, let's say, some parts of Georgia, I know there are parishes there where this gets mentioned at every Mass. And so it really depends on where you are. I see, Stephen, that you're in Michigan, which is a state of a different complexion. It has a different kind of political culture, different population, and so you would expect that to have an impact on how much can we do in bringing people along in the liturgy in this way. Also, I have a personal thought that I personally don't like it when prayer is used as a way of preaching at people. Prayer is when we're talking to God. Any consideration of the people around us is secondary. And if we decide to use prayer as a way of communicating information to people, we really should move that over into the homily. And keep our prayers devoted to worshiping God and asking God for things, and not covertly preaching to the congregation.
Stephen, happy birthday to you. Thanks very much for that question. It is open forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest. 888-318-7884 is our number. We'll be right back with more after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live. EWTN, teaching the truth.
The best way to pray is to go to the Word of God, because it's Jesus. You're encountering the living God every time you go to His Word. And you always ask the Holy Spirit to reveal to you His Word and to speak to your heart. And then you read the Word of God until He takes a 2x4 and whacks you over the head. And then you stop, you listen, and you respond to that verse.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Just like the saints of the Counter-Reformation, our own souls are in constant need of reform, of reconversion to God and His will for us. We struggle with sin. We become distracted in prayer. We find it hard to be loving and easy to be selfish. In Reform Yourself, Sean McAfee shows you how these magnificent saints can be guides to your own personal transformation. We all need to reform our souls. Let the saints who reformed the Church show you how. Order your copy of Reform Yourself today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did the Catholic Church add books to the Bible? Or did Protestants remove 7 books from the Old Testament? Why Catholic Bibles Are Bigger takes you on a fact-filled tour through the history of the Bible, revealing the whole story behind the lost books of the Protestant Old Testament. With the latest information and discourse on crucial issues, Why Catholic Bibles Are Bigger is a book that belongs in the library of every serious student of Scripture. And as a special bonus, if you order online, we'll add an ebook copy of 15 myths, mistakes, and misrepresentations about the Deuterocanon to your order absolutely free. Get your free ebook today. Order your copy of Why Catholic Bibles Are Bigger by logging on to our online shop at shop.catholic.com.
Welcome back to Open Forum on Catholic Answers Live. Jimmy Akin is our guest. I am Cy Kellett, your host, and Open Forum is open for business. 888-318-7884, the number. Happy to take your calls. Questions having to do with faith and belief and anything that might, maybe you have a question like, I always wondered why Catholics did that. This would be a great day to call. 888-318-7884. You can be Catholic and call. You can be non-Catholic and call. Anybody's welcome to call. Shonda did in Maryland, listening on 1160 AM. Shonda, you are on with Jimmy Akin. Your question, please.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. So I have two questions.
Okay.
They're kind of related.
Okay, what's the first?
So the the first one, in light of the fact that it was Epiphany Sunday this past Sunday, I was just wondering what the significance of the 3 gifts that the 3 wise men brought for Jesus.
Okay.
And then, did you want me to ask the second one?
Yeah, why don't you go
or-
ahead so I can relate the two if need be.
Okay. All right. So the second one was about incense during Mass, because I know that it's not used at every Mass, only on special occasions. So I was just wondering what the importance of the incense is and why it's only used at certain Masses and not others.
Sure. So in regard to the first question, the gold, frankincense, and myrrh they're the three gifts that the wise men bring. Incidentally, we're not told that there are three wise men. In all likelihood, there could have been a lot more than that. But the reason that people tend to assume there are three is because three gifts are mentioned. And in terms of understanding their significance, we have to distinguish a couple of different levels. One level is what they literally meant in that culture at that time. Well, gold is money, and incense was something that people would have. They would burn it. It smelled nice, and it was a kind of luxury. Myrrh was something similar. Myrrh is another natural substance like incense, frankincense is, and it had a variety of uses. Sometimes people will connect it with Jesus' death because myrrh was sometimes used as an embalming spice. But trust me, they're not thinking, oh, we're going to save this until Jesus is way older and then use it then. They're not literally bringing the myrrh for later use at Jesus' death. They're literally bringing it because it's a substance that, like incense, was used as a kind of a luxury. And it had a variety of uses. You can look them up online. I mean, you go to Wikipedia, it'll have a discussion of this. But basically, these were all three very expensive items, and they're the kind of items that you would give to a king. One of the things that happens even today is when you have official diplomatic exchanges, there's frequently an exchange of gifts. So if, for example, you see this at the Vatican. If you see a head of state go over to the Vatican, he'll have a gift for the Pope, and the Pope will give him a gift back. And this is a common thing that has happened all the way down through history as a way of expressing goodwill and fostering good relations between different heads of state. And so since the Magi back in their homeland had realized a new king of the Jews has been born, they wanted to foster good relations by going and paying him tribute. And so they brought the kind of gifts that you would bring a king. They brought gold and then the luxury items, frankincense and myrrh. And it was a way of fostering good relations with the Jewish people and with the prospective Jewish king, so that presumably once he's an adult and he takes the throne, he remembers the people that paid him tribute at his birth and has good diplomatic relations with them. That's presumably what they're thinking is happening on the literal level. Now, they didn't know that this is a very unusual king of the Jews. It's not just an ordinary king, which is why he wasn't born in Herod's palace. You know, they show up in Jerusalem, they go to Herod's palace. Why? Because that's where you'd expect a newborn Jewish king to be. You know, you don't expect him off somewhere else. It wasn't the star that told him to go there. The star is never depicted as leading them. It's depicted as being in front of them when they go to Bethlehem. But this business about their following the star, it's not there in the text. They go to Jerusalem because that's where you expect the new king of the Jews to be. And so then they find out this is a very different kind of king. They have an angelic dream that tells them to go back to their own country by another route. And so there's more here than just the literal sense that they were expecting going on. On the literal sense, these are luxury items for a king, but because they're also taken up into God's plan, if you want to see a second spiritual level here, where maybe you do relate the myrrh symbolically to Jesus' death, you can do that, but we just need to make sure we keep that on the spiritual level of interpretation of the text, not the literal level. In terms of the second question about incense, incense symbolizes a variety of things. One thing that is just obvious is it smells good, and that's why one reason people have used it as a way of giving honor to God by generating a good smell. Also, the smoke from incense visibly goes up and ascends to the heavens, to the sky, which is where we depict God as being. He's really outside of space and time, but we depict him in the sky. And so since the smoke ascends to the sky, it's kind of like our prayers going up to God. And so in Scripture, we find the symbol of incense, and you'll see this in the book of Revelation in a couple of places. We see the symbol of incense used to symbolize prayers ascending before God. And so that's another symbol that it has. Symbolic value it has. In terms of why it's used in some masses rather than others, it's because it's different. It's because it's special. And so by reserving its use for certain masses, it helps add a greater solemnity to those masses. If it was used at every single mass, it would be ordinary, and we'd be deprived of one way of making certain masses even more special. There's also, frankly, another reason, although this one is new. This is not something that's really been around for a long time. There are a lot of people today who have allergy problems, possibly caused by the fact that as children, our immune systems are not exposed to enough germs these days. We're too clean, and that leads to a hyperactive immune system that produces allergies. And so you have a lot more awareness today of people with chemical sensitivities who can be allergic to the incense. And so that's actually, speaking frankly, a practical reason that it's not used in some masses, because there are parish staffs out there who are concerned about people who might have chemical sensitivities and be allergic to it.
Okay, Chandra?
Yes, that was perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, very good. Great talking with you. Thank you. The incense used to drive me crazy when I was an altar boy when I was little. Now I love it. I don't know. I guess it's like broccoli too. I didn't like broccoli when I was. Maybe it's an acquired taste.
Could be. It could also be that you don't have it directly in your face the way you might have as an altar boy.
That's the thing, is it would just go
straight
straight up your
really
nose.
overpowering.
Yeah, yeah. 888-318-7884 is the number. I want to share with you a question from Facebook.
Yeah.
Pepper on Facebook was reading Matthew chapter 7 and got to verse 6 and wondered about the meaning of, I'll just read it to you real quickly in one version.
Okay.
Do not give to dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before swine, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you.
Yeah. So Jesus is articulating a general principle here. Some people do not have a proper appreciation of what's holy. Some people, and in this metaphor, he's comparing those people to dogs or pigs, because dogs and pigs have no appreciation for the value of a pearl. Okay, if you have dogs and pigs, and if someone's a human, like you are, Cy.
Yes. Thank you for acknowledging that.
That is correct, right?
Well, unless there's a full moon out.
Okay, so you're a human being, and if I want to curry favor with you, I could bring you a pearl.
That
say,
would,
hey,
in fact,
Cy,
curry favor
here's
with
some
me.
pearls. Aren't these great? I want you to have them. And that would foster good relations with it.
We should act this out. Next time, bring pearls.
Okay.
We'll do that.
I'll cut up one of those dime store necklaces then. But if I try to do that with a dog or a pig that's hostile towards me, dog or the pig is not going to care.
Right.
And will just still attack me anyway.
Yeah.
And so Jesus is using that reality as a way of teaching us a lesson about human interactions, because even some human beings are in the position with respect to the holy of not appreciating its value. And so those people, if they're hostile to us, then sharing what's holy with them is not going to benefit us. They'll profane whatever the holy thing is that we're sharing with them and then proceed to attack us anyway.
Yeah.
And this has had a variety of applications over the course of the years, over the centuries. Sometimes it's been applied to the sacraments.
Yeah.
Don't give the Eucharist to someone who doesn't
baptized.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay.
And by doing the things you need to do, like being baptized to receive it. It's also applicable in other situations. Like if someone, let's say I'm on one of those horrible TV angry debate shows that you see on news channels,
Yeah.
and I'm up against some rabidly anti-Christian person.
Right.
That's not the time for me to start talking about the most sensitive, precious things about my faith right there, because they're likely to turn around and just start blaspheming those very things,
Right.
and continue to attack me and profaning the precious pearls of wisdom I may otherwise be sharing. So it's what Jesus is counseling here is prudence, recognizing the situation you're in and the kind of person you're dealing with and how they're going to react, and don't automatically assume that they're going to have a full appreciation for the holy that will lead to a positive response. Sometimes you need to protect what's holy by not exposing it to their profanation.
Pepper, I hope that was helpful for you. Did you grow up around pigs at all?
Cows.
Cows, yeah.
And dogs, but
I didn't know
pigs.
that pigs do attack you. Pigs attack people. I didn't.
They can.
I learned that late in life, not by being attacked by a pig.
Well,
I
in
just
fact,
didn't grow up
wild
around pigs.
boars are particularly known for attacking people.
Yeah.
And they can even, big ones can be dangerous.
Yeah. Well, all right. So, Pepper, thanks for that question. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Hello, everyone. This is country music artist Colin Ray. Do what I do and keep it right here on Catholic Answers Live.
January is Pro-Life Month, and to get as many people as we can involved in the pro-life cause, we're making Trent Horn's book, Persuasive Pro-Life, available for just $5 a copy. That's a savings of over 70%. This book was made specifically with you in mind, to help you engage in sustained and meaningful dialogue and to give you the tools you need to change people's hearts and minds, so that together we might build up a pro-life culture, one person, one conversation at a time. To get your copies of the book Persuasive Pro-Life for just $5 each, call 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com.
Go forth and preach the good news. It's not just a suggestion. If you want to take more seriously the command of Jesus to share the gospel with those around you, consider joining St. Paul Street Evangelization. It's a grassroots organization that brings the Catholic faith to the streets in a non-confrontational way. Visit our website, www.streetevangelization.com, to learn more. And don't forget to like us on Facebook. It's time to do our part.
As the legend goes, the Protestant Reformation began when Martin Luther nailed a list of his grievances with the Catholic Church to the door of All Saints Church in Wittenberg, Germany. But do you know the whole story? In Catholic Answers' brand new documentary, The Protestant Revolution, you will hear from top apologists Tim Staples, Jimmy Akin, Carla Broussard, Trent Horn, and Steve Weidenkopf as they expose the errors of Martin Luther and of the other so-called reformers. This DVD will give you a clearer understanding of our Protestant brothers and sisters, and you will be better equipped to engage them about what separates us and about what unites us. Order your copy of The Protestant Revolution today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting shop.catholic.com, or by asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. That's not the groovy music yet, is it there, Nick? That is not the groovy music yet, but all right, it's music. It'll do. But we were just talking at the break about Facebook. We noticed that Facebook changed some of their policies. I guess YouTube did too. That you have to you have to accept notifications.
Yeah, tell it to send you notifications when we're on if you want the reminder.
Right. So if you haven't been getting your notifications, you might want to do that. I
know the way you do that on YouTube is there's like a bell icon, and you click on the bell icon,
and it'll send
you notifications.
Yeah, because we don't want you to miss out on Catholic Answers. But I think that's just
all of that Catholic answery goodness.
I know, delicious Catholic, buttery Catholic answery goodness.
Yeah.
I don't think that was directed at us, though. Do you think that Facebook is attacking us and being mean to us?
Well, you know what they say.
What do they say, Jimmy?
Big corporate entities like Google or in its parent company Alphabet and Facebook don't always have Christian values at heart.
You know, there's been some. I don't know that much about it, but there's been some evidence coming out about that, about prejudicing these things against Christian outlets. I'm not saying that that's what this is about. I'm just saying
But you can defeat it by clicking the notifications.
Just say you want to get notifications on Facebook, because we love having you there on Facebook. And thanks to everybody who joins us on Facebook, Periscope, YouTube. and anywhere else that we might be streaming. It is open forum this hour. We still got Jimmy Akin for a while, so let's try to get as many questions as we can in before he goes. Next hour, Trent Horn will be here, so if we don't get to you this hour, don't go anywhere. Don't despair. Trent will be here to take your questions, but let's go now to Shanika in Houston, Texas, listening on Guadalupe Radio. Shanika, your question for Jimmy Akin. Oh, Shanika, I think we have a connection problem there.
Yeah, it's important once you get on the line and you get through the call screening to keep your ear to the phone, because there's a time lag, as we've discussed, between when we pick it up and when you're going to hear it on the radio.
Well,
so
she dropped. I think
don't rely on your radio.
She might have been driving or something and hit a dead spot outside of Houston at a bend in the road.
They got those
the spot I'm talking about.
Big loops around the city.
I know that. Yeah, right.
Yeah, the two big ones.
Okay, let's try Joanna in Cummington, Massachusetts, listening on Catholic.com. Joanna, thanks for calling. Your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hello, I want to say a prayer to Fulton Sheen.
Okay.
How would I address him and Fulton Sheen pray for us?
Venerable.
He's not a blessed yet, so I can't say that.
Venerable.
Furthermore, what are the levels of addresses from a normal person all the way up to a saint?
Okay, so you would address Fulton Sheen as venerable, and the levels are servant of God, then venerable, then blessed or beatus, and then saint.
Does that make sense to you,
All right, thank
Joanna?
you.
What about if you're addressing a family member, though? Like, say my grandmother died years and years ago. So I can just say grandma, right?
Yeah.
Like, you just call her
whatever you would have called her in life.
Yep.
But unless she's had a cause open, she's not yet, Saint Grandma or anything like that.
Saint Grandma. She would like that, actually. Okay, yeah. I know what I can talk to my grandfather, too, but he always said I could call him anything, just so long as...
Didn't call him late for dinner?
Exactly.
That was a saying in his generation, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Right. Pablo in Atlanta, Georgia, listening on the EWTN app. Pablo, you are on with Jimmy Akin. Your question, please.
Thank you, Jimmy and Sai. My question is the following. Jimmy, if you could please expand a little bit on I want to understand the interaction between the soul and the body. I hear people saying, I'm a soul trapped in this body and so on. So like they're two different separate entities. So I just wanted to, if you could please explain, what the interaction is right now and then when we die and so on.
Okay. I can, now there's a lot that can be said here, and there are a lot of actually open questions regarding this that are dealt with in various disciplines. In theological anthropology is one of them. In philosophy, the problem of mind is one of them. The mind-body problem is one of them. But in basic terms, from a Christian point of view, the soul and the body are intimately related, so that in fact, it's an infallibly defined teaching of the Catholic Church that the soul is the substantial form of the human body. Now, as soon as I say that, I got to give a caution, because form does not mean shape. When we hear about the form of something, we associate it with shape. And that's the way the word form is used in English, but it's not the way it's used in philosophical theology, which is the relevant usage here. But nevertheless, without going into a big lecture on what it all means philosophically, it indicates that there's a very intimate connection between the soul and the body, such that without the soul, you don't even have a living body. You don't have a human body. It requires the soul to have a human being. Also, because that's our natural state, to be embodied spirits as humans, which is different than angels. They're just spirits. They don't naturally have a body, but we do. So you also don't have a complete human being if you just have a spirit. Our spirit does survive death, so it is capable of existing without the body, but it's not a complete human being. You really need both parts, because since our souls are the substantial form of a body, it needs that body there to be complete. And so there's a very intimate relationship. It's not accurate to say we're a soul trapped in a body. It can sometimes feel that way. If someone is, let's say, sick and suffering, they can feel trapped in a body. And so it's not wrong necessarily to use that kind of language poetically. St. Paul even comes close to using that when he says, I'd rather depart from the body and be with Christ. He doesn't say I'm trapped, but he says I'd rather be away from the body and be with Christ, just because of how great it is to be with Christ. You also find language in Scripture where Paul kind of compares the human body to a tent, where he'll talk about dwelling in our present tabernacle, our present earthly tent of our body, but then we're going to get a big upgrade in the next life at the resurrection of the dead. So you do have this language in Scripture where sometimes images are used of a soul as if it's dwelling within or within a structure that's compared to our body. But those analogies, like all analogies, have their limits. And in reality, there's a much tighter and more intimate connection between the soul and the body than what those images suggest. So they express partial truths, but not the full truth.
How's that strike you, Pablo?
That sounds fascinating. I appreciate very much, Jimmy, and I'm just going to keep looking in Catholic.com to expand a little bit more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Yeah, because it is one of those things that you can just keep exploring.
There are whole books
you're not going to
written on
exhaust
this subject.
it.
Yeah.
Right. Let's go to Zach in Rochester, New York, listening on 92.9 FM. Zach, your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Very well, Zach.
So my question is, when a police officer or a member of the military has to unfortunately take someone else's life in order to protect others, is that a sin that can be forgiven?
It's not a sin at all. If he has to take someone's life in order to protect others, if someone is a bad actor, whether they're a criminal or a terrorist or an enemy soldier, and there's no other better, more effective way for him to protect innocents than to take that person's life, then taking that person's life is not a sin and doesn't need to be forgiven. In fact, it can be a meritorious act if you're protecting innocent life. It's regrettable, it's sad, and it's going to be traumatic because almost everybody who we're not natively designed to take human life, and there have been various studies like of military soldiers who have experienced combat, and almost everybody who actually does take a life, and one of the things they found is a lot of soldiers will just shoot high just because they can't. And it's actually a startlingly high number of people on their first encounter, even though they've been trained for combat, can't bring themselves to actually target another human being and will shoot high and deliberately miss. But of those who actually end up taking life, it's like more than 90% of them will report later being very traumatized by that. Only a small number don't. And those people tend to have psychopathic tendencies, which is a lack of empathy. And so almost everybody who ends up taking a life is really traumatized by it. Now, it can be necessary and it can be meritorious, but it is very regrettable. It is something we want to try to avoid. And if we have to do it, we're likely to experience traumatic consequences unless there's something broken about us to where we don't have empathy. Because if you have empathy, the fact that you've taken another life is really going to eat on you. So that's a general sketch of the ethics of that situation and of the psychological reality of the situation as well.
Does that address what you were getting at, Zach?
Yeah, I have a quick follow-up question, though.
Okay.
If both sides think they're protecting innocence, then is it still a forgivable? Well, I mean, you said it wasn't a sin, but
right, that's right.
Is it still something that could be acceptable if both sides are thinking they're protecting innocence?
So there's a famous quote from Abraham Lincoln that whenever you have two sides in a war, at most one of them can have a just cause. You can't justly have two people fighting each other. Somebody is in the wrong. Maybe both people are in the wrong. But the way the question is phrased of if someone has to do it to protect the innocent, well, then it wouldn't be a sin. But if you have both sides fighting each other in good faith, to where a soldier on both sides, they think they're doing the right thing, well, objectively, at least one of them has to be wrong. Because God never commands us to righteously fight each other. He's a God of peace, not of war. And, but because they're both in good conscience, So let's say it's World War I. You got a British soldier and a German soldier. They're both fighting for their country. They both think they're doing the right thing. Because they think they're doing the right thing through no fault of their own, God won't hold them accountable. It is objectively still a sin for whichever one of them is wrong.
But they don't have the power
because they
yeah.
don't know that it's a sin.
Right.
God's not going to hold them accountable for it, and so God will treat them as if they had not sinned, although they'll find out what the truth was after the fact in the next life.
Zach, thank you very much for that. Jimmy Akin, Luigi Galvani.
Galvani, yeah.
Oh,
the frog guy.
Yeah, he's the guy that can make the frog
I never
legs
made
dance.
the frog legs jump. I would eat them as a kid.
Eat frog legs?
We'd go frog gigging and catch frogs and eat their legs.
I've still, to this day, I've never eaten a frog leg, but I've heard they taste like chicken. But that's what people say about everything.
Yeah, it tastes
No, not
fishier
really.
than chicken.
Trent Horn's coming up next hour. So if you're on the line, stay on the line. If you haven't called, 888-318-7884 is the number. Open Forum continues with Trent after this on Catholic Answers Live. Thanks.
Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, Open Forum. Trent Horn, our guest this hour. Trent is the author of many, many things, and the list keeps growing, but most recently of 2 books about the Catholic faith. One, Why We're Catholic, published here at Catholic Answers Press, and the other, The Case for Catholicism, published by Ignatius Press. Open Forum means you can ask Trent any question you've got about the life, the faith, the history of the Catholic Church. 888-31-TRUTH is the number. You do not have to be Catholic to call. Hi, Trent. How are you?
I'm doing well, Cy.
New Year progressing well?
Yes, I would say so. You have a little break over Christmas and celebrating New Year's. Though once you have children, New Year's, especially small children, New Year's isn't that quite exciting of a holiday. You're like, I made it to 10:30. It's the New Year somewhere.
Right.
I'm going to go to bed.
Yeah, we do that. I never understand Arizona time. You all are on a different clock than the rest of us, or you just don't change the time. So sometimes you're on, sometimes you're off. But we're 3 hours from New York. So they dropped that ball at 9 o'clock. We're like, boom, Happy New Year. Night. See you tomorrow. Right. And it doesn't change when you get older. Well, I guess there's people our age who are more fun than we are, but my wife and I are dull.
No, you enjoy
no, we're dull.
The more cozy aspects of marriage and ringing in the new year in a nice private affair at a reasonable time.
All right. Okay, you put a really good spin on how dull we are.
I used to work. I should work part-time for a PR organization. So
yeah, that was real PR for my marriage. 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. Well, you know that we're giving your stuff away practically here for Pro-Life Month, or for, I guess, Respect Life Month is what the more common term, but we're giving away your book, Persuasive Pro-Life, for $5. Making the Case for Life, your DVD, for $5. Do they ask you before they do this, or they're like, whatever?
I think it kind of comes with the territory, but I'm happy that they do it, because these are resources I love getting out to people on a wide scale, and especially when we have Sanctity of Life Month, Respect Life Month. I think this is Sanctity of Life, because I thought October was Respect Life.
Oh, very okay. All right, I'll buy that.
I think. We'll find out here later, maybe. But obviously, pro-life issues, especially abortion, come up a lot this month because it's the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. And so people will be talking a lot about this, as they usually do. Later this month, I'm going to be speaking at the Students for Life conference in Washington, D.C. to about 2,000 or 3,000 high school and college students, equipping them to go back to their university campuses and engage those who disagree with them on the issue of abortion. So it's very exciting, and for people who want to learn more about how to talk about this issue, that's why I wrote Persuasive Pro-Life, because it's the most in-depth pro-life apologetic book aimed at lay people out there easily. So yeah, visit our shop website. But yeah, I think you can get it right now, limited time, for about $5.
$5, that's it, right? 888-318-7884 is our number. It just so happens my wife is watching us on Facebook right now, and she just typed in, "I'm not dull." But I believe if you're watching Facebook in the middle of the day, by definition, you are. Well, sorry, I'm not gonna we got lots of calls. Trent,
how's that shoe tasting?
I'm going to be in trouble when I get home. Catherine in Maine, listening on our good friends there at the Presence Radio Network. Catherine, you are on with Trent Horn. Your question, please.
Hi. Calling about a question in an encounter I had at a hospital recently. I'm a Eucharistic minister, and a young lady who was quite upset came towards me and asked if I had a Bible and also if I knew how to do an exorcism. So we got her a Bible, and I said, I don't know how to do an exorcism, but I said, I will go up with you. So I went up to the hospital room. She said her boyfriend, who has had all these medical tests, they all came out negative, but he had been playing with a Ouija board, and then he started to act very in a peculiar way, with strange voices and being aggressive and things like that. So Fortunately, a priest was walking by, the chaplain, and he was in there, and we got a lot of sacramentals for him, miraculous medals, rosary beads. I gave her a little Catholic prayer book that she meditate on the Stations of the Cross and just keep thinking about Jesus, but I didn't really know what to do. I guess to believe it or not. I didn't want to reinforce the wrong things. It's kind of complicated, I guess, but is that pretty much all that I would have been able to do, was just kind of be there and be quiet? I also felt I should be kind of quiet because I didn't want to stir up anything one way or the other.
Sure. Well, what I would say, first of all, it's always appropriate to pray for people who are sick, and if they appear to be the victims of a spiritual attack or even a demonic possession, there's nothing wrong with praying for that person and asking for the Lord to send the Holy Spirit to heal them and to bind, any spirits that may be attacking them, to bind in the name of Jesus, to depart from this person. We should always pray for anyone, and we don't necessarily have to assume what they're suffering from. If we see someone's in a hospital and they're suffering from some kind of illness, maybe it's physical, maybe it's psychological, maybe it's spiritual, we may not be able to determine that, but we can always pray for their well-being. There's nothing wrong with that. However, performing the rite of exorcism is something that should be left to those who have been granted permission by the church to do that, which are typically priests, though I do have relatives who are lay people that are involved in exorcism ministries. So there are lay people who are involved in this, but typically it is priests who are granted this faculty of permission to perform this particular rite. Actually, a few years ago, the church just translated from Latin into English a new rite of exorcism. So if you suspect that someone is the victim of demonic possession, you should probably contact a priest that you know, or you could contact the diocese that you're in and ask if there is an exorcism healing ministry, one with priests and lay people involved. If they have one, or there may be a nearby one, they can refer you to, because it requires a certain amount of experience to be able to determine if someone is the victim of demonic possession, or if they're suffering from an unrelated psychological malady or mental illness. So it takes experience to be able to determine that, and experience to also know how to properly respond to that, because when you're dealing with demons, you're playing with fire. No pun intended. Well, pun intended. So that would be my advice for you, Catherine. Is that helpful for a path forward if you're dealing with this in the future?
Yes, it definitely is. I just felt like I kind of left her out in the cold, and she wasn't there the following week. So I think it would have been good if I could have given her a number to call the diocese, and they could have been a good resource for her.
Yeah, or if you run into her again, you can always go and contact the diocese yourself and ask about just ask for exorcism healing ministries or any priests in the diocese who have experience with exorcism, and then you can bring that information to her. But I think it's better to not wade into something that you are not familiar with or not properly equipped to handle. It's better to refrain than to jump into something and get in over your head, especially if you're dealing with something as serious as demonic possession. So yeah, hopefully you can get that information, and then if you see her again, share that with her. And for our listeners, we have some resources on exorcism on our website. I think Patrick Coffin conducted an interview with an exorcist you can read on our website, and we have a little 20 Answers booklet, Angels and Demons, that probably handles some of that as well. So thank you very much for calling.
Thank you, Catherine. We have to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum on Catholic Answers Live with Trent Horn right after this.
Don't you just love listening to Trent Horn? Did you know you can book Trent or any of our other great speakers to speak at your parish or special event? Contact one of our seminar coordinators through the Speakers Bureau section on Catholic.com today to find out more information.
January is Pro-Life Month, and to get as many people as we can involved in the pro-life cause, we're making Trent Horn's DVD, Making the Case for Life, available for just $5 a copy. That's a savings of over 70%. This DVD was made specifically with you in mind, to help you engage in sustained and meaningful dialogue, and to give you the tools you need to change people's hearts and minds, so that together we might build up a pro-life culture, one person, one conversation at a time. To get your copy of the DVD, Making the Case for Life, for just $5 a copy, call 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com.
As the legend goes, the Protestant Reformation began when Martin Luther nailed the list of his grievances with the Catholic Church to the door of All Saints Church in Wittenberg, Germany. But do you know the whole story? In Catholic Answers' brand new documentary, The Protestant Revolution, you will hear from top apologists Tim Staples, Jimmy Akin, Carla Broussard, Trent Horn, and Steve Weidenkopf as they expose the errors of Martin Luther and of the other so-called reformers. This DVD will give you a clearer understanding of our Protestant brothers and sisters, and you will be better equipped to engage them about what separates us and about what unites us. Order your copy of The Protestant Revolution today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting shop.catholic.com, or by asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Call now with your question, 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Come on, Nick. I just feel like you're being mean to me, Nick. Nick, you're just being mean to me. It's Thursday. You haven't played the Groovy Thursday open forum music yet. It's like break after break after break. I still don't get my groovy music. I know you're going to play it one of these times. Open forum today on Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest is Trent Horn, the author of Why We're Catholic and The Case for Catholicism, among many other things, and a well-known and well-respected speaker on the Catholic faith and on respecting the sanctity of human life. 888-318-7884 is our number, 888-31-TRUTH. We go now to Matthew in Alexandria, Virginia, watching on YouTube. Thanks for joining us on YouTube, Matthew. Your question for Trent.
Hello, guys. Nice to talk to you. My wife and I have really benefited from your guys' show. It's been great. I appreciate you guys for what you do.
Thank you.
I wanted to see if you guys can kind of get a little bit of clarity for me. I'm a kind of a student of history, and I've been doing a lot of study on Islam, and so I wanted to kind of get a grasp on where the Catholic Church is, because right now we're in RCIA. We've just become, I guess we're going to become Catholic this Easter, and I'm trying to come to grips with, when I read in the Catechism, it says that that Islam serves or worships the same God. They have the same Abrahamic faith. But when I look at the history of Islam, I just don't see it. The attributes of God are different. And now I'm talking about Muslims because, I was a Protestant for many years, and now I look back and say when I was a product of what I was raised in. So, of course, I'm going to believe those things. So it's not about Muslims, but it's about Islam itself. I mean, what is the Catholic understanding of Islam and its position with Catholicism, and how are we supposed to see this? Because 550 battles, taking over 2/3 of Christendom and half of Italy, all of Spain, I mean, all the way up to Vienna. That stuff really weighs on you when you look at history. So I wanted to kind of get yours for a second, because I really respect you guys. We listen to you every night, so I wanted to see what you guys have to say about it.
Sure, and I think a good place to go would be in the Catechism of the Catholic Church in paragraph 841. Speaks about Islam within the plan of salvation, that as God has a plan of salvation, he understands that other religions will form over time, but because God is omniscient and all-powerful, he can help guide people to at least some aspects of the truth, even if they find themselves in a false religion. So there are things that are true in other non-Catholic or non-Christian religions. So just because they're not the one true faith, it doesn't mean they're 100% in error. We can find some common ground with different faiths. For example, with Protestants, we have a lot of common ground because we believe in the divinity of Christ, the Trinity. We believe in salvation by grace. With Jews, we have common ground in the Old Testament. We believe in one God, and we hold everything that was revealed in the Old Testament. So what does the Catechism say about Islam, and what kind of common ground can we find there? This is what it says. The plan of salvation also includes those who acknowledge the Creator, in the first place amongst whom are the Muslims, These profess to hold the faith of Abraham, and together with us they adore the one merciful God, mankind's judge on the last day. So it's important to understand what this is saying. We should tease out what it is not saying. I noticed that you said in your question, you said that the church teaches that Islam belongs to the Old Testament also, or has a relationship there. If you notice in this part of the catechism, it says of Muslims, these profess to hold the faith of Abraham. So when you read the Quran and you see how it describes the Old Testament, it actually does get a lot of it wrong and slants it towards its theological opinion. They claim to be the offspring of Abraham, but they're not connected to the covenantal promises of the Old Testament like Jewish people are. So they profess to hold the faith of Abraham, but are not direct descendants of that faith like our Jewish brothers and sisters are. Second, this is not saying that the God of Islam, or Allah, is the exact same as the God of Christianity. All it is saying is that Christians and Muslims have something in common in that we are monotheists. We both agree there is one infinite God, and this God is holy or good and will judge the sins of mankind on the last day. So there is one God, he is infinite, he's of a moral nature, and he will judge sin. That's something Christians and Muslims have in common, but after that, we do have much more that we do not have in common because Muslims deny the Trinity, for example. So is that helpful to understand what we have in common, but also what we don't have in common?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of bothered when I would try to look at the attributes they had for Allah and the attributes we have for God, and they were completely diametrically opposed. So it does help to understand that they are professing to be part of the Abrahamic line, and they're professing to serve the same God. So we're looking at it as more of a connection so that we can evangelize. Rather than
right, well, but I do want to stress, though, that there are things we do completely agree on. We do both agree there is only one God. Muslims are fierce monotheists. That's why they have so much trouble with the Trinity. So we do have something in common there. For example, we agree that there is one God. They also agree that the Old Testament and the New Testament represent divine revelation. The Quran, in several places, tells people, Allah sent the Torah, he sent the gospel, and you should believe Jesus, you should believe the gospel. What happens today is that Muslims will say that the New Testament, the text of the New Testament has been corrupted. So the parts of the Bible that say, for example, that Jesus is God, or that we should worship Jesus not merely as a prophet, but as God who rose from the dead, they say, well, those parts are corrupted, there's textual corruptions, and that simply actually isn't the case when you look at textual criticism and how the New Testament has been preserved for the past 2,000 years. I cover that a little bit in my book, Hard Sayings, A Catholic Approach to Bible Difficulties. I have an appendix that deals with claims that both atheists and Muslims make that say we can't trust the Bible, and we most assuredly can. So hopefully that's a good start for you, and I'd also recommend just searching for Islam on our website, Catholic.com. We have a lot of good resources and articles about that as well.
Thank you, Matthew, for that call. I hope that was helpful. We go now to George in Los Angeles, California. George, you are on with Trent Horn. Your question, please.
Hi, Trent.
Hello,
I have
George.
A question. A family member of mine was on YouTube, I guess, and they're watching a documentary. I don't know. They said it was from PBS, of Arab perspective on the Crusades, and I was a bit of it myself. I got the impression that they were kind of bashing Europe at that time, that it was very poor, backwards. But he tells me that the documentary mentions of a Muslim diplomat who's visiting Europe, and he purports seeing Catholics using prayer as a form of torture. And I haven't gotten to that part yet. I'm just wondering if that's possibly true or not.
Well, number one, I'm skeptical of hearing this. I've never heard of this claim. One, about a Muslim diplomat who goes to Europe. So I'm wondering here, what does he mean prayer is being used as torture? I assume it would be prayers being used for prisoners who are tortured, but most of these prisoners would have been in the eastern part of the empire or in the Middle East. They wouldn't have been in the middle of Europe. number two, what do they mean that prayer is being used as a form of torture? I mean, compared to most kinds of medieval torture that were present, that we have to remember, of course, that torture was common. It's been common throughout human history to use to extract confessions or to punish people. And that actually during the Middle Ages, people who were convicted by the Inquisition of undermining the authority of the state or the church, they often wanted to be tried in ecclesial courts instead of state courts, because the state courts were very harsh in their use of torture, and the church was renowned for not being as harsh in that same way. So, when you think about medieval torture, if I could just sit and have somebody praying to me a bunch, I would way pick that over something like the rack. So, I think that this sounds like a kind of urban legend being peddled. And when it comes to the Crusades, a lot of modern historical studies of this, especially popular studies you see in documentaries, are just usually very distorted and biased against the Catholic faith and against Europe, painting Islam as kind of, this peaceful religion who's being attacked by Western imperialists. And when that's not the case, what happened were that Christians have been dwelling in the Holy Land for centuries, and it was Muslim conquerors that took over this area, subjugated them, killed them, or required them to pay onerous taxes and not practice their faith as they would like. And then Christians reacted to the call from people like, I think it was Pope Urban II, who gave them the call to go and rescue the Holy Land from these conquerors. So I would recommend for you, George, that if you see this documentary and you hear stuff in it like, wait, that doesn't sound right, you should get a book, and the book is The Glory of the Crusades by my friend Steve Weidenkopf. It's published by Catholic Answers Press. Awesome book, Glory of the Crusades. Thomas Madden is also another good academic source on Crusade history to cut through these myths. So is that helpful?
I have one last question.
Sure.
If you don't mind. Yeah, sure. So he also mentioned from the same documentary, like I said, I'm watching it myself, but he mentions that the documentary purports that the Islam conquest of Europe brought multiculturalism, and that the Islamic Empire brought multiculturalism because they didn't require Christians to convert. And I don't know. Is that also a myth, I guess?
Yeah, that's also a myth as well. You can only in the most strained sense of the word could you say they did not require people to convert. Usually they did, but in some cases a person was allowed to retain their religion, but they were treated as a second-class citizen. They had to pay onerous taxes. They certainly couldn't proselytize their faith. I mean, even today in many Muslim countries, proselytizing or sharing the Christian faith is punishable by death. So, yeah, that's also, once again, there's going to be lots and lots of myths. That's why Steve Weidenkopf was able to put together a whole book on that, The Glory of the Crusades, which I'd recommend for you to check out to kind of cut through all the myths you're going to come across on this subject. So thank you very much for calling in.
Thanks, George. We'll go now to Greg in Omaha, Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. And Greg, we may have to do one of those. Give us the question, and we'll give you the answer after the break things. We'll see how we do on time. Your question for Trent Horn.
Okay, thank you. A couple different scenarios, one question. Basically, a family member who is married in the Catholic Church gets divorced, wants to remarry, obviously without an annulment, and would be outside the church. And another family member possibly thinking of a same-sex so-called marriage. What is my moral obligation? I guess do I attend the service? Do I not attend the service? If by attending the service, am I somehow endorsing my support? As a Catholic, what do I do in that situation?
Okay, so Greg, your question is, what do I do when it comes to attending I've been asked to attend a same-sex wedding, and then did you say there was another wedding, another situation, or just the same-sex wedding?
Well, that one, and yeah, the other situation was, if a family member who was married in the Catholic Church got divorced, did not get an annulment, and wants to get remarried, with the idea that, being remarried is essentially adultery.
Yes, right. Well, here's what I would say. The Church does not have an explicit teaching on what weddings a person can or cannot attend. However, it does teach that we have a duty to not cause scandal, and scandal occurs when we partake in an activity and make others think that it is moral what is taking place there, and we lead them into sin or thinking something is good when it's actually wrong. When it comes to a same-sex wedding, I think it's very cut and dry that a Catholic could not attend a same-sex wedding, because this technically isn't even a wedding. This is not marriage, because marriage is the union of a man and woman. This is something. What's the word I want to use here? It's a fraudulent replacement of marriage. It takes marriage, the union of men and women, the conjugal act that unites a man and woman, and replaces it with just adult relationships. That's not what marriage is. So that would always cause scandal for a Catholic to appear at. Now, could there be cases where you have a man and woman getting married and there's a certain impediment? Possibly, possibly not. That might be something we'll have to discuss more when we come back from the break.
We will do that when we come back right after this. Trent Horn is our guest. Hang on, Greg. We'll get to the second half of that question when we come back on Catholic Answers Live.
Glad you're with us. Join us on air with your questions today on Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, this is Trent Horn, and I'm here to tell you about my new book, Hard Sayings, a Catholic approach to answering Bible difficulties. Have you ever read something in the Bible that confused you? Or has a skeptic ever asked you to explain a scandalous passage and you didn't know what to say? Doesn't Genesis contradict science? Why does the Bible promote slavery? How could God order his people to kill women and children? It's happened to just about everyone. But now you have a place to turn for the answers. In Hard Sayings, I look at dozens of the most confounding passages in Scripture and offer clear, reasonable, and Catholic keys to unlocking their true meaning. After reading this book, you'll be equipped to answer the toughest questions skeptics ask about the Bible. So don't be left without an answer again. Order your copy of Hard Sayings today by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or by asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Looking for the best in solid Catholic resources that can answer your questions on all things Catholic? Looking for books, audio, and DVDs by the top Catholic thinkers and speakers on the planet today? Stop in today and visit the shop at Catholic.com. All of our resources are time-tested, apologist-vetted, and trustworthy and faithful to the teachings of the Catholic Church. There's truly no better source for solid Catholic resources anywhere on the internet. And now, we've made your online shopping even more affordable with $5 flat rate shipping within the continental U.S. When you're shopping for great Catholic books, CDs, DVDs, and more, turn to someone you can trust. Visit the shop at Catholic.com today. That's shop.Catholic.com.
The Trump administration rolls back the Health and Human Services contraceptive mandate.
U.S. bishops calling for the total elimination of nuclear weapons.
Pope Francis offers prayers for the victims of the California wildfires.
The U.S. House of Representatives has passed a bill banning abortions after 20 weeks.
And Pope Francis says the death penalty is contrary to the gospel.
Your link to news headlines Catholics count on at the top of the hour. Weekdays on EWTN Radio.
Nick, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, Nick?
I think that's Throwback Thursday.
Throwback Thursday, is that
we're throwing back about 15 centuries,
Yeah.
10 centuries.
Okay, thank you, Gregory the Great, for that music. But I was looking forward to the groovy music, and you didn't play the groovy music. It's just mean, Nick. You're a mean person. It is open forum. It is Thursday. Trent Horn is our guest, and we should be playing the groovy Thursday open forum music, but we're not. 888-318-7884 is our number. When we went to the break, you were talking with Greg a little bit about attending weddings in various situations. You wanted to continue with that trend.
Yeah, so he gave two examples. One would be a same-sex wedding, 2 men or 2 women. The other would be a wedding with a Catholic who's divorced, has not sought an annulment, and is getting remarried. I would assume outside of the church, because this wouldn't be allowed in the church if you've been previously married. And what I said, the answer to that is the church has no specific teaching on attending weddings, but it does say we ought not cause scandal. And I think, anyone who attends a same-sex wedding, this is scandalous because that's not even marriage that's taking place. This is an opportunity to scandalize anyone who sees a Catholic at something like this. Now, however, the case of someone who's been previously married and didn't get an annulment and getting remarried, it's much more common, something that happens in many of our families. And it's a situation that, unlike the other one, there's a possibility it could be regularized if the parties involved obtained an annulment and had their marriage convalidated. Now, you still have to judge it. You could still be causing scandal by making people think that this is all right. So you have to judge that, because you might also have counterbalancing reasons for going. For example, if you're a close family member or friend to the people getting married, you might want to maintain that relationship because it will allow you in the future to help them obtain an annulment, convalidate their marriage, or maybe to help them come back to the faith and live as brother and sister if an annulment is not possible. So that's one where you could try to, there may be a compelling interest in attending that outweighs the possible harm of scandal, but you would just have to discern for yourself and follow your conscience on that matter as to whether it is scandalous or not for you to attend. I think at Catholic Answers in general, our recommendation is not to attend weddings like this, but ultimately it would be your conscience to decide. But I think it's very, very clear in the case of a same-sex wedding, one cannot attend. That's definitely scandal. Others, it may not be as clear, but you'd have to make sure to follow your conscience in that regard. So Greg, is that helpful?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. I guess what I wrestle with is, like you said, doing what is morally right and not causing scandal, and then the other side is the relationship with these people and, causing harm or, wanting to maintain the relationship as a means of, maybe, I don't know, maybe someday that they will decide to, their hearts change and they decide,
right,
to look into the Catholic Church or something like that.
Right, and that's a valid way of viewing this when these situations come up, and they're very common. So I'd recommend for you and other listeners, we have a good article on our website. I believe my former colleague Jim Blackburn wrote it. It was called "Should I Attend the Wedding or Not?" And it talks about weddings and marriage validity and the scandal involved when it comes to attending irregular weddings. Mostly it focuses on situations like the latter, where you have someone who is divorced, previously married, and does not have an annulment. So definitely check that out on our website, and thank you for calling.
We go now to Jared in Alabama, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Jared, you are on with Trent Horn. Your question, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
I can.
Okay, my question was, I was asking about music in the church. Where I live, I encounter a lot of Church of Christ, and a lot of the claim that they usually like to make is that instruments in church, are not, talked about in the New Testament. It's silent on that, therefore you shouldn't do it. And I also read somewhere, I don't remember where I read this, but apparently music and like harmony was banned in the early church because it was like playing with people's emotions too much. So could you maybe like flesh that out for me a little bit, and how would you respond to that?
Yeah, first, I would say I'm not familiar with any particular bans on either singing or playing musical instruments in the early church. It's possible that there were some churches or regions that prohibited the use of music because it may have been a cause for scandal, or it may have been something that was too similar to what was happening in pagan temples, for example, though I'm not familiar with any kinds of bans like that in the early church. As for the Church of Christ argument that the Bible doesn't speak about using musical instruments in church, the problem with this argument, number one, of course, is that it's relying on the assumption of sola scriptura, that everything we believe as Christians must be explicitly found in Scripture. Because if you believe that, there's actually a whole lot of other things that you wouldn't be able to do in church either. For example, the New Testament never describes anyone getting married in a church. It doesn't describe people really meeting in churches. A lot of the early believers who were Jews met in synagogues for prayer. Now, it says they may have gathered together in homes, for example, but getting together in large churches was a later phenomena than what we see in New Testament times. So if you restrict your worship to only what you explicitly find in the New Testament, there's a lot of things we take for granted that many Protestants say are fine that are not actually described in the New Testament. Finally, what I would say is that since Jesus gave authority to the church has authority to decide its discipline and practices. Jesus did not, well, one, he never actually told, prior to his ascension into heaven, he never told anyone to write anything down, and he never gave anyone any writings. He didn't give us a giant manual saying, do this, do that, if this happens, do that, because that's not practical. He gave us a church with his authority, and a church that would have successors that would inherit that authority, inherit the Word of God, written and unwritten in sacred tradition, and use that to help understand how the church should live out the faith that was deposited once and for all to the saints, as Jude 3 says. So the church changes disciplines or traditions with a lowercase t, such as the kinds of vestments that are worn, church decor, art, music, singing, in order to reach people where they're at in their different cultures. But if the church has the authority to bind and loose, as Jesus says it does in Matthew 18:18, then it's got to have that authority to be able to say this music's appropriate and this is not. And when you look at documents like Sacrosanctum Concilium from the Second Vatican Council or the General Instruction of the Roman Missal, all it says about music is that music is acceptable in church. I think it says the organ has a place of high esteem, but other instruments are acceptable if they can be played in a way that the sacredness of the church is maintained. So is that a helpful understanding of that?
Yeah, definitely. So you said about the early church, there was, maybe it was in some, isolated parts, but it was never I guess it was never an official thing for all of the church to obey.
I'm just saying I'm not familiar with there being a universal ban on the use of instruments in churches for early worship. So it's nothing that I'm familiar with, but all I'm saying is that even if there were bans like this in certain regions or in certain places, the church has the ability to prescribe worship, proscribe, forbid, and prescribe, say this is how it should be done, because the church, Christ has given the keys of the kingdom to Peter and to his successors and really to the apostles as a whole. And so having the authority of Christ, the church is able to issue disciplines and rules to help people conduct worship and liturgy in a proper way to grow closer to Christ. So if you'd like more about that, I think good resources in some of this would probably be, I think Mike Aquilina has a book, the Apostles and the Church Fathers and Their Times, which may touch on some of these issues. Otherwise, I would just check out our website, Catholic.com, for more information. But thank you for calling.
Thank you, Jared, for that call. We go now to Louisa in Illinois, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Louisa, your question for Trent Horn.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
we can.
Awesome. I am a huge fan. I'm super excited to be talking to you, especially of your pro-life work.
Thank you.
And that's been super helpful to me. But my question today is about dances. So I am a senior in high school, and I'm always really interested about learning new things about my faith. And I go to a Catholic high school. So I watched this one YouTuber, and he is a very conservative Catholic, and he usually has some very good things to say. But recently I watched a video of his where he was talking about dances, specifically situations like a high school dance. And he mentioned that even at a Catholic high school, even if there's not something that would be considered like a mortal sin, when somebody is dancing, it's still not a good idea to go. And he quoted St. Francis de Sales saying that no Catholic should go to any organized dance at all.
Right. Okay. Yeah, this is interesting. This reminds me of a small town in the Midwest that actually banned dancing outright and didn't change their ways until Kevin Bacon gave this really big speech. Are you familiar with that at all?
You're referring to the older version of that. There's a newer version without Kevin Bacon.
So Luis, I'm referencing the movie Footloose. If you haven't seen it, that's what that reminds me of. Great movie, by the way. Well, here's what I would say. That number one, the church has no specific teaching saying that dancing, even co-ed dancing among young people, is wrong. I mean, anyone who would say that dancing in general is just always wrong, I don't see any evidence for that. In paragraph 1674 of the Catechism, talks about various forms of piety surrounding the church's sacramental life, like Stations of the Cross, processions, and it says religious dances. So dancing is just movement of the body. It's a kind of art, and it's a kind of celebratory art. The Old Testament talks about how David danced before the ark, which was also mentioned in Footloose. That was in Kevin Bacon's speech in the movie. Now, it seems to me what this YouTuber is concerned about is he quotes St. Francis de Sales, and I've also heard a similar quotation related to a regional council of Baltimore in the United States, talking about how Catholics should not attend particular dances. But in the context, it appears that what's being prohibited are places that are notorious for lewd or crude behavior taking place. These include things like masked balls, where people go and wear masks to engage in dance, and they don't know who the other people are, and people wander off and do things that are not appropriate with one another. But even today, there are high school dances that are not appropriate. I mean, I remember when I went to high school, which was a fairly long time ago, in contrast to what some people may think. But even in high school dances now, you'll see people grinding. They're not even dancing. They're just simulating sex acts, and it's gross, really. That obviously would be, if that is happening a bunch at a dance, yeah, I think that's something scandalous that you shouldn't attend. But if it's something I've been to, I was invited, the first prom I went to, this girl went to a really small Catholic school. They only had like 15 high schoolers. So everyone in the school had to invite someone that didn't go to the school. And so so she invited me, and there were like 30 of us and like 15 chaperones. And we were all just dancing, at this restaurant that was rented out, and in a very clean and fun way. So as long as people are respecting one another, not leading people into sin, not dressing inappropriately, not simulating sexual acts when they're dancing, I think it can be very appropriate. That's why I think it's great for young people to learn clean forms of dancing, like swing dancing, for example, or ballroom dancing. For the young men who are listening, you should learn to dance. It's a forgotten art that people should know. So is that a helpful reply on that question?
Yes, that is wonderful. Thank you so much. So I can go to my prom without worrying about it?
Sure. Hey, make sure everybody's respecting one another. Just dress appropriately, and remember it's about dancing, having fun, but not leading people into kinds of temptation. Have you seen that movie Footloose, Louisa?
I actually haven't. I don't watch a lot of movies, though.
So you knew the answer. You knew that Kevin Bacon had given this answer years ago. So, I think that should be fine. But when in doubt, talk to your parents, chaperones, and maybe your priest or youth minister, and I think things should be fine. Honestly, when it comes to high school proms, I'm more concerned about what happens after prom. So I would recommend, if you go to prom or others go to prom, go to a place that is also chaperoned with parents who are morally responsible, to make sure everyone's behaving, having a good time, and doesn't do anything they'll regret. So keep that in mind, and thanks for calling. Thank you very much for that call, Louisa. I think, Trent, and all joking aside, I think we're going to do some dancing at the next Catholic Answers conference. Yes, I saw that Jimmy's going to call some square dancing there. So yes, I forgot. So there's swing dancing, ballroom dancing. Square dancing is a wonderful, vigorous, fun, morally appropriate way to enjoy dance. I've had the pleasure of being at dances that Jimmy has called on multiple occasions. So if you would like to, come also for our great talks on faith and science. But hopefully it comes through and you could have some square dancing with Jimmy Akin. Check out the website, CatholicAnswersConference.com, CatholicAnswersConference.com to learn more. Got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Catholic Answers Live with Trent Horn is coming right back.
January is Pro-Life Month, and to get as many people as we can involved in the pro-life cause, we're making Trent Horn's book, Persuasive Pro-Life, and his DVD, Making the Case for Life, available for just $5 each. That's a savings of over 70%. Both the book and the DVD were made specifically with you in mind, to help you engage in sustained and meaningful dialogue and to give you the tools you need to change people's hearts and minds so that together we might build up a pro-life culture, one person, one conversation at a time. To get your copies of the book, Persuasive Pro-Life, or the DVD, Making the Case for Life, for just $5 each, just call 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com.
Pope Francis said, "All of us are called to mature in our work as evangelizers. We want to have better training, a deepening love, and a clearer witness to the gospel. St. Paul Street Evangelization's online school of evangelization will equip you with the tools you need to be an effective evangelist. We'll ask for a pledge of financial support, but if you're unable to give, we'll set you up for free. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
It could be said that anti-Catholic notions of the Church's history are the original fake news. With all the misinformation being spread, where does one look for the truth? In The Real Story of Catholic History, Professor Steve Weidenkopf gives you the facts on over 50 of the most common misconceptions about Catholic history and shows you how to answer them simply and powerfully. Whether it's to answer claims about Catholicism's supposedly pagan origins, old myths about the Inquisition that never really seem to go away, or more modern errors that anti-Catholics put forth, The Real Story of Catholic History is an essential resource for every Catholic's bookshelf. Order your copy of The Real Story of Catholic History today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
There it is, the groovy Thursday open forum music. Thanks, Nick. We can be friends again because you finally got around. 2 hours we've been at this almost, and you finally got around to playing the groovy music. Trent Horn is our guest. Open forum means any question that you have on the life, the faith, the history of the Catholic Church. We will do our very best to get you a helpful and maybe even convincing answer. 888-318-7884 is the number if you would like to talk with Trent. And we go now to Sergio in McAllen, Texas, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Sergio, you are on with Trent Horn.
Yes, good evening. I'm glad that the groovy music came on because I was hearing it also.
I know. Thank you, Sergio. That's what I needed, some support. As a matter of fact, we need more callers to support the groovy music.
Thank you. My question is not much. I'm the youth minister at my church, and my wife and I, we teach catechism to kids and adults. I just wanted to ask her, what book would Trent recommend, on the church fathers? Because for the adults, we use the Bible and the catechism, but something to help them with history to understand. Because, many of them have questions because they have friends that are, Protestant or Baptist, but what would they recommend from the church fathers to show them the connection that the church has been Catholic since the beginning?
Sure. There's a lot of different resources I'd recommend on this subject. One that Catholic Answers puts forward is a book called The Fathers Know Best, Your Essential Guide to the Teachings of the Early Church by my friend Jimmy Akin. He was actually on the previous hour, and it's a really good reference, and it's ordered by topic. So you can look up, what do the church fathers believe about purgatory? What do they believe about Mary, about the Mass, about the Trinity? So it's great that you can look that up. And at the beginning of the book, what's really cool is that it goes over, who these church fathers were, where they lived, when they lived, the circumstances they lived in, and how they're related to the apostles and the beginning of our faith. So we had people like the Apostolic Fathers. These are people who had a close connection to the apostles, like Clement of Rome, for example, or St. Polycarp, St. Ignatius of Antioch, and then others who were the descendants of their writings later on. So that would probably be my first recommendation, would be The Fathers Know Best by Jimmy Akin. Also, Pope Benedict XVI wrote a great book on the Fathers. So I think it's just called The Fathers of the Church. It's Clement of Rome until St. Augustine. That the Fathers go beyond St. Augustine, but that's just the area that he focused on in that regard. And then another one that I would recommend, Rod Bennett has a great book called The Four Witnesses. And so that deals with 4 early apostolic and early church fathers that really talk a lot about the basics of our faith and how ancient something like the Mass is. And I think the 4 witnesses are Clement of Rome, Justin Martyr, St. Ignatius of Antioch, and St. Irenaeus. Were the ones that are discussed in that book. At least they were 4 early fathers. So those are some I would recommend there. And definitely keep your eye out. A lot of the work on the church fathers are written by Catholics. There are some that are written by Protestants. The largest collection of the church fathers, I think, available in the public domain is the Philip Schaff collection. The Philip Schaff collection is like 38 volumes. And it's a good resource if you want just like the really total writings. But it's unfortunate Philip Schaff was very anti-Catholic in his writings in the 19th century. So there is a little bit of an anti-Catholic bias in how he writes about the fathers. But I would start with Jimmy Akin's book, then Rod Bennett, Pope Benedict XVI's book, and Mike Aquilina, I think, has a book on the fathers as well. So that should get you going for a while, I think.
Okay, Sergio?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, and I bought Trent's book, The Why We're Catholic and Hard Sayings. That's a very good read. I've been buying a lot. I did my Christmas shopping from you guys using the winter.
the winter sale. Yeah, right. Sergio, you're all right. You say all the right things. You should call all the time, Sergio. I think maybe you should be a regular Thursday caller, especially when Trent's on. I just want to mention, Trent, you gave all those resources. And I don't mention this enough, but Nick actually works really hard. And one of the things he does is he writes down all those resources. And then on the show page, because for each show, if you go to Catholic.com, there's a show page for that show. He'll list all the resources that you just mentioned. So if someone's ever listening to Catholic Answers Live and they hear Jimmy or Tim or Trent or Carlo or anybody mention a book or an article or a website, Nick will write it down, and it'll be there on the website for you the next day when Nick posts the show. Sergio, thanks again for that call. Let's go to Sam in Vancouver, British Columbia, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Sam, your question.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, thank you.
Okay, so I'm a Iraqi Catholic Chaldean living in Vancouver, BC, and I was born Catholic, but then my twin brother and my older brother converted to what is it called Protestantism. So they claim to be their evangelical. So I was having a conversation with them about how Mary was immaculately conceived and she has no original sin. And so I went to YouTube and I showed them Tim Staple with the host Marco on YouTube, how Tim talks about Mary without original immaculate conception.
So Sam, I just got to get to only because we're running right up against the clock. Is that what you would like Trent to address? Whether Mary was conceived without sin?
Yes, but biblically, please.
Biblically, okay. Any comments there on Mary's conception without sin, Trent?
Sure. I would say that this is the dogma of the Immaculate Conception, that, we are freed from original sin through baptism. God chose for Mary to be conceived without original sin and to be protected from sin. It was fitting for her so that she could be a suitable mother for the Mother of God, that God became incarnate through her, received flesh from her, and that flesh wasn't sinful. It wasn't necessary, but it was something fitting and glorious for God to do. And this is something that we know from sacred tradition, what the Church has given us in sacred writings, church fathers in the 4th century, like Ephraim the Syrian, that talk about Mary being without stain, being without sin. And then later, as the Church came to understand original sin, seeing how Mary was preserved from that as well. When it comes to Scripture, I would say that there is a reference to this dogma, or at least it's reflected in Scripture in Luke 1:28, when the angel says, "Hail Mary, full of grace." That particular Greek word, and in the context it's used in that address, the whole context, I believe that points to that Mary was full of grace as a particular characteristic of her being, something that she had throughout her whole life. I'm not saying that verse proves that dogma, but I believe it is reflected, and we can see it in there when we understand this dogma and how we've received it from sacred tradition. If you'd like to learn more, check out our website, Catholic.com. And in my new book, The Case for Catholicism, I have half of a chapter that deals with the Immaculate Conception.
Thanks very much for that call. Thanks for all the calls today. And Trent Horn, thank you very much for spending that hour of open forum with us.
Of course, happy to do so.
Tomorrow, the Bible Blueprint for the Church with Carlo Broussard and Matt Fradd will be here to talk about how to win an argument without losing a soul. We'll see you then, God willing, on Catholic Answers Live.